Back again, Rudy Herrera. Today we're going to talk about how to move your narrative with character interaction. Find out what's the best way to do that with dialogue. Do that with this medium, which is pictures and paneling pacing. So I've been working with you guys through this whole my whole comic, right? And I've shown you step by step the way I'm going through it, which is the way you're working through it, at least for right now. And so the other day we worked with this kind of character movement. Today we're gonna touch on this, and if you remember a few videos back, we mapped this out, our little thumbnails with a story, right? So I hallmarked this right here because this is an important page for me, right? If you look at this, all these are little hints for me, and they're gonna be little hints for you when you're working through your story. You hallmark this and you decide what's valuable to you. And the reason I mark this is because to some degree there's gonna be a lot of dialogue going on right here, which is what we're gonna use to push the story. Basically something's gonna happen right here and we're gonna switch gears right here on this star part, right? So there's going to be some kind of talking going on, there's going to be some kind of character exchange that happens that's going to segue into the next part, right? We're going to get all this information right here, that way we can push on the story, right? Which is the beauty of this medium. So I did that, and then I also, if you remember, I took my 8 pages and when I did my paneling work, I believe in the second video, I sketched it out, right? So this right here is gonna be this right here. And right now the paneling is real loose, but I got a basic idea of what I'm trying to do. So let's run through that. And again, your paper is gonna be half of this, what I'm working on this, just for the sake of you seeing it. Whoa. Just so it's more visible to you. So let's keep this over here. One more time just to review how different this is from what's actually going to happen. We're going from here to right here. So what's going to happen is our main character, Patricio McCullough, is gonna meet the chief, right? And the chief is pretty much gonna give him the whole trajectory of the rest of the story, right? He's gonna tell in his remarks a little, he's gonna let you know a little bit about Patricio, he's gonna let you know about what he has to do and what's going on. He's a lot of mood temperament, right? So I'm gonna show you 2 ways you can do this, because basically think about this, right? This whole page is pretty much one guy talking to one guy. That's it. He's got something to say, he's got something to say. After this paging, due to the real estate of the comic, it's got to go on, right? So, but there's some information I need to push right here. So I'm gonna show you a couple ways to do this, right? So one way, you know, if you're not comfortable basically being super dynamic with your characters, you know, panel it out. If you feel you need to really talk things out and you're not really strong on showing mood or showing you know, conveying an emotion, you could really do that. You know, if you're not comfortable, in this case, here's the chief. In short form. Here's Patricio McCullough, right? Herrera, right? And this right here, this model, if you do that, this can be reiterated right here, right here, right here, right here. If you don't feel comfortable with you know, putting in other dynamics like hand emotions or, you know, posturing or something like that, this literally can be repeated for a number of different panels. Just be mindful that's gonna get boring to the reader, right? But you know, that's a plan B, fail safe. If you really need to do that, you can do that, and that's one way of doing it, right? So like, let's look at it like this. Just imagine this is our whole page. Right now we're just working with this, right? He's mad. Blah. Blah. And of course I'm just putting that there just as a placeholder, right?
Good job!
So what I'm trying to convey right now is this is the chief of police, and he doesn't really want to mess with Officer McCullough, but he has no choice, right? So he can't really be so generous with his words. He's got to kind of establish some sort of authority and some backhanded, you know, permission, as if like, you know, I'll let you do this only if there's some conditioning behind his words, right? So this is not a nice casual conversation. He's kind of chewing him out. So if you don't feel comfortable being like super dynamic with that, like I said, this can be repeated. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Just be mindful you can't do that too long without losing the interest of your reader, right? Imagine if you see this for 2 pages, you might be talking too much. I'm pretty sure whatever is being said in this panel is pretty much the main idea. This is the main reaction. The point is that this is a comic and it's not meant to be read like as far as a book, right? So don't keep it too wordy, because the pictures are what helps move it. So, but if that's where you're at, if that's what you feel more comfortable with, do that, right? Now, I'm gonna show you a way you can basically take the same vehicle, right, with the same amount of real estate and flip it a little bit differently and maybe even make less drawing work for you, right? So let me do that right now. You kind of get a hint of it right now with what was on my original paneling layout, right? It's something like this, but it's a little different. You know, I decided the more that I'm drawing this thing, and this is another benefit of doing this way, is I got a little bit more sillier with it, right? Like there's more opportunity to put more jokes to make it fun for the reader, and this is an example of that. Essentially, this is the same idea. 2 characters talking to each other, and I'm back and forth. But the way I'm doing this leaves space for me to find creative and funny, interesting ways to do that. So let me show you what I mean, right? Remember, it's the same idea. I'm gonna compare the 2 at the end of it. And let me run that down. Let me run that for you, right? So again, I'm gonna panel this out. I'm sure you see the similarities right here with the paneling. And this is also going to set rhythm for it, right? 6 panels right here. This is going to show that this needs to happen in quick succession, because this is a quick exchange, right? So here's my little narrative bubble. Maybe it'll say at HQ or something like that, right? Right here, I don't necessarily need to fill this out. Right now I'm focusing on this character interaction, but this is essentially going to be, you know, police station HQ. This is a scenic view. I don't need to emphasize that right now. So, same thing as I showed you. Alright, you see the way that's kind of set up. You can imagine Officer McCullough is going to be right here, being talked to. Police chief is going to be right here, talking to. So, here's the little silly idea I came up with this. I came up for these panels to make it more interesting for the reader. Check it out. So I sketched it out, right, in pencil. And basically it's, you see what's going on right here. Chief is aggressive, it escalates. Mr. McCullough, Officer McCullough gets his face burnt off eventually towards the end, right? So what's happening right here is he's chewing him out. And that's just a little creative way to make it more interesting, than a back and forth with thought bubbles or talk bubbles. You always want to look for those opportunities where you could visually maybe amplify that, or you know, just show more of that with picture form, right? You see how agitated this dude's getting right here, and maybe right here, you know, this is a lesson we could touch on later, but this would be filled with words. This gives opportunity right now, like maybe even this crosses this barrier, to even show more emphasis about how much police chief is wanting Officer McCullough to hear these words, right? Because it's broken by the paneling, but the words are still spread across the panel. So just to give a quick comparison, to think about that, you know, we went from this, right? We went from our basic paneling, which was just an idea. I knew I wanted this intensity right here. And this is going to be something for you to figure out between characters, right? Because if you practice your shapes, your circles, or whatever, you know, rudimentary shape you figured out for yourself, like even if you're working with stick figures, right? Even if you're working with stick figures and that guy's saying that and this guy's saying this, right? If there's a lot of that going on, you're gonna have to figure out a way to make it interesting. For me, in this situation, there was a lot of talking going on, so I needed to figure out a way to make it interesting, because I wasn't necessarily happy with this, right? I didn't want to draw this guy's face 4 more times with these little exchange bubbles. But at the same time, it's a vehicle. If it's necessary, if you feel you need to do that, go ahead. But keep it at a minimum, I would suggest. Because if you see one page of this, another page of this, another page of this, you're gonna lose interest, right? Might as well be reading a book. That is not what this, you're not capitalizing on the strength of this medium, right? So I basically took this idea, all right, the same thing, pretty much the same format, you know, over here, Chief being aggressive with this guy, pretty much the same format, but I put a little artistry into it, and I was able to come up with this. And if you look at it side by side, like even the paneling is less, right? Because you don't necessarily need to know what this guy's saying. Even right here at this point, you know this guy is upset with this guy. Anything in between is gonna be something aggressive or authoritative. Like he's not singing happy birthday to him, right? And that's the whole thing with the drawing, is you're trying to convey mood, and you're trying to find ways to vehicle that faster with your imagery than you would with your words or any kind of written dialogue, right? So be mindful of that. And you know, you just saw it took me 3 turns to get here, right? I got here with the paneling, I got here with the makeshift comic, and this is actually my 3rd sketch and drawing of this, right? And even after this, as you saw before in my last drawings, I'm gonna give it another turn, and maybe another turn with details and drawings. So you know, this is a few more passings, but I'm gonna be able to rough it in and come up with ideas. Right now, it's at this point, it's still malleable, and it's still readily available to take ideas. So don't miss this opportunity when you're doing these things. Work through it like this. That way you give yourself those space to have these good ideas, to think about what is the best way to do these things. Don't be so focused on over explaining your story. We don't need the origin story from the Chief. We don't need to know how he came to be. We already know just by him talking to Officer McCullough like that, he's some authoritative figure. And that's what I need you guys to be mindful of when you're doing character interactions. It's just how much do you need from that person to make his role useful in the story, right? Because you're going to be following one character. In this case, Officer McCullough. All we need to know about this guy is that he's his boss, and he gets to talk to him like that. We don't need to know what he's been through. We don't need to know his whole life story, because we can get that right here. He's able to chew him out, and that's it. And that's, after this right here, this is the character interaction. The next page, the Chief is not there. It's a new scene. We got what we needed from him. He's been useful, and now he can be gone. So think of your characters like that. Think of your narrative, like how much do you need from them? How much value can you pull from them with those little words? And what can you really push with their pictures or their interaction with the character, right? So yeah, that's it. Like be mindful of that. It's gonna take you a couple sketches. And by the way, there was 2 that happened off camera that I didn't even know about. So this is about number 5. There'll be 2 more passings under this, and the final sketch will be ink. So you know, even at this level, you don't have to commit to it, but just be mindful of what you're doing and have some kind of idea, have some direction. Don't step into it blindly. And that's all I got for you guys today.